Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to take a look at painting checkers. And so in this video here, this is kind of a part one, we're going to work on checkers in the more traditional sense. So we're going to be using mostly paints to achieve our desired result. You can see here I have this base for this little orky guy, and we're going to paint one of the plates to look like it's got a checker pattern going on. Ceramite white is going to be the first thing we use. I'm just going to slap a little bit onto my palette, thin it down just a bit with some water, just the dampness of the brush really, and then apply a base coat. Now this model has been primed in black. I believe it was a Stynylrez black, just a regular old black. And basically because I'm using the ceramite white, which is a base tone, it covers on top of black very well. This is what it looks like after about 2.5 kind of layers. Really half is just kind of like really thinned out, kind of just very thin consistency. Abaddon black with some Lamian medium. Lamian medium. And we're basically going to slap that onto the palette. We're going to use a drop of medium. This is kind of a 1-to-1 mix ratio. I've thinned this down. I'm using a fine detail brush. Well, not a detail brush, but I'm using a brush that comes to a nice fine point, and I decide to run the lines basically perpendicular to the lines of the panels. So basically I'm just using the shape of the panel itself to kind of guide me on where I'm drawing my lines, and I'm basically just freehanding these lines. And you can see I'm not terribly straight here, and the main key factor here to bear in mind when laying your lines down on a surface, especially if there's curvature to it, on the end of the panel there is curvature, trying to maintain a perpendicular angle to the surface. Now I'm not really maintaining much of a perpendicular angle, that's just because of the way I'm filming this, but basically if you maintain a perpendicular angle to the surfaces, the brush to the surface, you will maintain a consistent thickness of line as you work your way across. And if you see your line kind of getting thicker and thinner, that's because the angle's changing, and that's really it. So the more practice you get. Now, of course, I'm not really demonstrating that very well here because, again, it's just the angle in which I'm demonstrating this for the camera. But once I have the lines in a somewhat grid pattern laid out, I pick a square, which, I decided, okay, I'll start with this square here. And basically you begin painting every other square. And then the next line up, you paint the opposite, the ones that are adjacent to it. So obviously we started with those 2 squares, and you can see here we picked the next 2 squares. And we just continue on like that all the way through the panel surface, or whatever it is we're working on, be it a wing of a plane or our shoulder pad or what have you. This is also another excellent opportunity. Here I'm just putting a second layer in on the boxes just to strengthen up the color with black here because I have it thinned out initially. But this is an excellent opportunity to try out these kinds of things, especially if you have not done this before, and try it out on a larger surface like a base, a tank side, or what have you. Celestra Gray is next. This is not entirely necessary, but this is just to show, for completeness sake, I'm basically going to throw in a little shadow on each of the white squares using the Celestra Gray, using this deeper gray color to create a bit of shadow on those surfaces, as you can kind of see here. And I'm just kind of laying it in kind of rough, but it also allows you to kind of clean up the boxes, as it were, because you kind of want to have all the squares kind of like the very corners kind of becoming very, very close, and that'll give you a very nice impression. If your lines were a little too thick, this is the point where you can adjust that look. Skaven Blight Dinge is a dark gray. We're just going to use that just to kind of create a little bit of highlight in the black squares, if you were so inclined to highlight and shade each of the squares. This is more of a traditional kind of method on how a lot of painters do paint checkers on a model, is you end up highlighting and shading each of the little squares after you've created the initial pattern. And of course here you can see after we've thrown that highlight down, and then the final effect is here. I've just cleaned it up just a little bit more, again kind of off camera because just for neatness sake. But that is it. That's checkers on a surface. Stay tuned for part 2 of this. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. Click the link in the description below if you're considering Patreon support. A huge, huge thank you. And take care of those brushes. They will take care of you.